Hello, and welcome back to the History of the Mongols. I'm your host, Kyle. We have previously discussed Genghis Khan's extensive campaigns against the Jin dynasty and the Khwarezmian Empire, which left him commanding an immense territory stretching from the Caspian Sea to the Pacific Ocean. With the defeat of Jalal al-Din Mingburnu near the borders of India at the close of 1221, Genghis Khan commenced the lengthy journey back toward Mongolia. During our last episode, we also examined the Khan's encounter with the Taoist sage Chu Chuji. Upon returning to his homeland, Genghis Khan undoubtedly intended to continue military operations in northern China, aiming to deliver a decisive blow to the Jin dynasty. While away, he had entrusted his general Mukhali, supported by Tangut allies, to maintain pressure on the Jin until his return. However, Mukhali's death in 1223 disrupted these plans. Subsequently, new rulers in both the Jin and Tangut states negotiated peace, complicating Genghis Khan's strategic position. The Tangut's betrayal necessitated retribution, while the unresolved issue of succession loomed large due to Genghis Khan's advancing age. We now turn to the final years of his extraordinary life. By the early 1220s, Genghis Khan was well into his 60s, an advanced age for the rigorous life of a steppe warrior. Over the nearly 2 decades since unifying the Mongols, a generation had come of age knowing only his supreme authority. To many Mongols, the idea that Genghis Khan could die must have seemed inconceivable, particularly given the stunning successes of recent campaigns, which reinforced the belief in his divine favour. Nonetheless, his advisors recognised the potential for internal conflict and fragmentation upon his death, a common fate of nomadic empires following the loss of their central leader. Indeed, Genghis himself had once capitalised on the division within the Naiman after the death of their ruler in the 1190s. According to the secret history of the Mongols, Genghis addressed the question of succession before launching the campaign against Khwarezm in 1219, though other accounts suggest the decision was finalised only near his death. It is plausible the succession issue was dealt with progressively over several years. Though Genghis Khan fathered numerous children with various lesser wives and concubines, the primary candidates to succeed him were the 4 sons born to his principal wife, Borte Khatun. The eldest was Jochi, an accomplished hunter and capable military leader. However, his legitimacy was persistently questioned due to his birth following Borte's kidnapping by the Merkit tribe in the 1180s. While Genghis consistently treated Jochi as his legitimate son, the second son Chagatai openly refused to acknowledge him as such. Chagatai, known for his stern disposition and strict adherence to Mongol law, harboured a deep animosity toward Jochi and perhaps deliberately fostered rumours of his illegitimacy to bolster his own chances for succession. This rivalry ultimately led Genghis to exclude both Jochi and Chagatai from becoming Great Khan, a decision simplified by Jochi's premature death in 1225. Historical sources differ regarding the cause of Jochi's demise, citing possibilities ranging from illness or a hunting injury to allegations of poisoning by Genghis himself. Regardless, Genghis allowed Jochi's lineage to inherit his territories, with his second son Batu assuming leadership. The remaining candidates were Genghis Khan's 3rd and 4th sons, Ogedei and Tolui. Both sons were notably heavy drinkers, even by contemporary Mongol standards. While Tolui was recognised as a fierce military commander, Ogedei was known for his generosity, diplomatic skills, and ability to mediate conflicts within the empire. Genghis likely saw Ogedei as the most capable administrator among his sons, a leader who could effectively govern and stabilise the empire, rather than merely pursue endless conquest. The secret history of the Mongols suggests Chagatai himself supported Ogedei's candidacy, highlighting the consensus regarding Ogedei's suitability. Genghis Khan returned briefly to Mongolia in the spring of 1225. As noted, during his absence, General Mukhali, aided by Tangut forces, had maintained pressure on the Jin dynasty until Mukhali's death in early 1223. Although Mukhali's relatives attempted to continue military operations, the momentum of the campaign diminished significantly. Facing significant internal opposition to the expensive and unpopular war, the Tangut withdrew their support. Additionally, both the Jin and Tangut states underwent leadership changes around this period. Emperor Xuanzong of Jin died and was succeeded by Aizong, while the Tangut king abdicated in favour of his son, Weiming Dewang. With both states under new leadership, and Genghis Khan still distant in Central Asia, the Jin and Tangut governments entered negotiations, culminating in a peace treaty in 1225. This treaty notably lacked any provisions for military cooperation, but nevertheless represented a clear defiance of Mongol authority. The Tangut decision to independently negotiate peace with the Jin was a continuation of their earlier refusal to supply troops to Genghis Khan's campaigns, ultimately setting the stage for the Khan's final military actions. From our perspective, 800 years later, the Tangut's decision to defy Genghis Khan in 1225 clearly appears unwise. However, it held a certain logic from their viewpoint at the time. Following the death of General Mukhali, and with Genghis Khan still occupied in the west, the Tangut believed the Mongol Empire might be reaching its peak, expecting that Genghis Khan's advancing age and inevitable mortality would lead to fragmentation and internal strife within the vast Mongol territories. Historically, nomadic empires tended to disintegrate after the death of their founders, and the Tangut hoped to benefit from the resulting instability. Unfortunately for them, this gamble proved disastrously incorrect. Upon returning to Mongolia in 1225, Genghis Khan demanded the Tangut reaffirm their subjugation by sending a royal hostage, a request the Tangut had never previously honoured. Mongol records state that the Tangut refused this demand, justifying subsequent military action. However, two rare Tangut sources, a military report from 1225 and a ritual song from the early 14th century, indicate that the Tangut complied by sending a young prince as a hostage. According to these sources, the Mongols immediately executed the child. The Mongols understandably omitted this event from their official records, as murdering a royal child hostage would have severely damaged their reputation, particularly since they aimed to justify their invasion as a response to Tangut non-compliance. If accurate, this act suggests Genghis Khan had already planned to attack the Tangut, intending to use their anticipated refusal as a pretext. The Tangut's unexpected compliance complicated this strategy, leading the Mongols to kill the hostage and falsely claim the Tangut had refused, thus rationalising their invasion. In the winter of 1225, Genghis Khan departed Mongolia for the last time, launching an invasion of the Tangut Kingdom in January 1226. The secret history of the Mongols recounts that during this campaign, Genghis Khan fell from his horse while hunting, sustaining serious injuries. Despite his deteriorating health and developing a fever, Genghis refused his commander's suggestion to retreat. Instead, he dispatched envoys to gauge the Tangut response, intending their reaction to determine his next move. According to the secret history, the Mongol messengers presented Genghis Khan's ultimatum to the Tangut emperor, Burkhan. They accused Burkhan of previously mocking Mongol demands and refusing to provide military support during the Khwarezmian campaign, actions Genghis had promised to address later. Minister Asa Gambu, who had initially rebuffed the Mongol requests, responded defiantly, openly challenging the Mongols to meet him in battle at his Alashan encampment. Upon hearing Asa Gambu's provocative reply, Genghis Khan, still suffering from severe internal injuries, resolved to continue the campaign, viewing withdrawal as unacceptable in the face of such direct defiance. He rallied his forces, appealing to eternal heaven as the ultimate judge of their conflict. Despite his poor health, Genghis Khan implemented a meticulously planned military strategy against the Tangut. His armies methodically seized the western regions first, preventing local garrisons from reinforcing the Tangut capital. Subsequently, Mongol forces moved eastward, strategically bypassing the fortified Alashan mountain passes that had previously hindered them in 1209. With Mongol troops strategically positioned between the Tangut capital, Zhongxing, and the Jin Empire, the Tangut were effectively isolated from any potential assistance. The campaign proceeded according to plan. The strategically significant fortress of Karakoto fell in February 1226, followed swiftly by other western Tangut settlements. Although Tangut officers serving the Mongols sometimes managed negotiated surrenders or mitigated atrocities, widespread devastation was unavoidable. By autumn, entire districts were surrendering en masse, and the Tangut emperor reportedly died from shock or stress. His successor's brief reign was marked by chaos and desperation, as the Tangut Kingdom, a civilization with a 2-century legacy, rapidly contracted toward its doomed capital. In the winter of 1226, Genghis Khan was positioned near Lingzhou, northeast of the Tangut capital, Zhongxing. In a desperate final effort, the Tangut dispatched an army from their capital, aiming to eliminate the Khan and halt the invasion. However, when the Yellow River froze over, Genghis seized the opportunity to cross and decisively defeated this Tangut force. This confrontation is recorded as the last battle Genghis Khan personally commanded in the field. Subsequently, he directed his forces to lay siege to Zhongxing, while he moved southeast toward Lintao to secure other cities in the region and to guard against potential Jin reinforcements. By the spring of 1227, Genghis had largely gained control over the area. Unfortunately, the injuries he had sustained the previous year had failed to heal, exacerbated by the continuous demands of the campaign. Possibly having suffered broken ribs or similar internal damage, infection began setting in, and his aged body weakened rapidly. Seeking relief from the approaching summer heat and needing rest, Genghis established his camp in the cooler climate of the Liupan Mountains, where he would spend the final months of his life. The historical record surrounding Genghis Khan's final month, August 1227, is fraught with contradictions. Zhongxing had resisted the Mongol siege for approximately 6 months before finally surrendering in late July or early August. The Tangut ruler, Wei Mingxian, requested a month's reprieve to prepare offerings for the Mongol Khan. However, when he arrived to formally surrender at Genghis Khan's tent in August, he was notably left standing outside for 3 days, possibly due to Genghis Khan having already passed away. The exact cause of Genghis Khan's death is not clearly specified in the secret history of the Mongols, although it strongly implies a connection to injuries sustained from his earlier fall. Given his advanced age, likely in his late 60s, and a lifetime filled with physical hardship and injuries, complications from untreated internal wounds or infection would have been plausible causes of death. Genghis Khan reportedly ordered that the time, circumstances, and even the very fact of his death remain secret. Revealing this information prematurely could have revitalized Tangut resistance, or might have been interpreted as a divine withdrawal of favor since he died before fully completing the campaign. Combined with Mongol cultural taboos regarding death, it is remarkable that any details survived at all. Genghis Khan's generals remained loyal and managed to keep his death concealed from his enemies. Only his closest family members and select commanders knew the truth. However, the lack of an official explanation led to widespread speculation, resulting in various, often dramatic accounts across different medieval sources. Persian chroniclers like Juwayni and Rashid al-Din, as well as the Ming-era Yuan Shi, attribute his death to illness aggravated by harsh environmental conditions, while the Syriac writer Bar Hebraeus specifically identifies malaria. European sources provided more imaginative interpretations. The Franciscan friar John de Plano Carpini claimed Genghis was struck by lightning, and Marco Polo alleged death from infection after being struck in the knee by a Tangut arrow, adding a vivid, if possibly apocryphal, detail to his narrative. A 17th century Mongolian tradition offers perhaps the most sensational account, suggesting that Genghis was mortally wounded during intercourse by a Tangut princess named Gerblachin, who had concealed a blade to injure him. Regardless of the precise details, Genghis Khan's death occurred in August 1227, with August 18th or 25th commonly cited in historical records. Wei Mingxian's 3-day vigil outside the Khan's tent earned him the ironic Mongol nickname Sidurk, meaning upright. Following his execution, Mongol forces attacked and thoroughly destroyed Zhongxing, subjecting it to extensive looting and destruction. While some inhabitants were spared by Tangut officials serving the Mongols, the capital city itself was obliterated. Even the grand pyramid-shaped tombs of the Tangut kings were stripped of their ornate tiles, leaving barren remnants that survive today as stark reminders of a vanished civilization. The Mongol perspective of the Tangut, as documented in the secret history of the Mongols, reflects intense disdain and hostility. The text vividly conveys Genghis Khan's orders. After he had plundered the Tangut people, and, making Iluku Burkhan change his name to Sidurk, had done away with him, and after having exterminated the Tangut people's mothers and fathers down to the offspring of their offspring, maiming and taming, Genghis Khan gave the following order: "While I take my meals, you must talk about the killing and destruction of the Tangut, and say, maimed and tamed, they are no more." In August 1227, the Tangut Kingdom came to an end, accompanying Genghis Khan on his journey into the afterlife. Temujin had entered the world clutching a blood clot, a powerful omen of his future as a great conqueror, and he departed it with the blood of empires upon his hands. The Tangut people were scattered, and their official archives burned alongside their capital, Zhongxing. However, it was not a complete extermination. Several Tangut cities surrendered peacefully, allowing communities to survive and integrate across China and within the broader Mongol Empire. Remarkably, the Tangut later achieved a higher status under the Yuan dynasty than even the Khitan and Jurchen peoples, viewed as less influenced by Chinese culture. According to contemporary accounts, Genghis Khan's body was transported back to Mongolia, accompanied by an elite honor guard, and likely interred at Mount Burkhan Khaldun, a sacred site closely tied to his early life and childhood refuge. His grave was intentionally small and hidden, possibly camouflaged by newly planted trees, and the entire region was heavily guarded and strictly forbidden to outsiders. Today, this area is known as the Khorig, or Great Taboo, and only minimal non-invasive scientific investigations have ever been conducted there. Alternative narratives exist, such as legends of his burial procession becoming stranded in the Ordos Desert. During the Qing dynasty, a shrine was established in the Ordos region to honour Genghis Khan's spirit, causing some modern confusion regarding the location of his actual grave. Other stories speak of the funeral cortege killing anyone they encountered to keep the burial location secret. Although human sacrifices are not explicitly documented at the time of Genghis Khan's immediate burial, his successor, Ogedei, later sent 40 maidens as offerings for his father's soul. Apart from these accounts, specific details remain obscure. Comparisons with the burials of later Mongol Khans, influenced significantly by sedentary cultures, offer limited insights into Genghis Khan's own burial customs. Although Burkhan Khaldun continued to be a favoured burial site for subsequent Mongol rulers over the next 2 centuries. Thus concludes the life of Genghis Khan, the founder of the Mongol Empire, conqueror of extensive Eurasian territories, and a figure regarded by some as a divine scourge. His passing was mourned by his followers, celebrated by his adversaries, and observed cautiously by neighbouring states awaiting developments in Mongol succession. Genghis Khan's third son, Ogedei, succeeded him, inheriting a robust military force led by experienced and devoted commanders, all believing in their destined supremacy beneath the eternal blue sky. Once a vulnerable boy abandoned by his tribe, Genghis Khan transformed his people into an unparalleled military force, ultimately achieving a near-mythical status among his followers. Modern Mongolians revere him as the founder of their nation, recognizing his reign as a pivotal moment in Eurasian history. His armies reshaped kingdoms and fostered an unprecedented period of interconnectivity across Eurasia, setting the stage for future integration under his successors. Would Ogedei fulfill the immense legacy left by Genghis Khan, or would he remain overshadowed by his father's monumental achievements? The continued growth and impact of the Mongol Empire will be explored further in our subsequent episodes, so keep an eye out for more. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of the History of the Mongols. If you could please take a moment of your time to like the video, subscribe and leave a comment for me, as it helps to get this series out to a broader audience. Thank you, and see you all next time.